Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Touradj. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thank you for being our guest here on Turning Tables. I
Yeah,
wanted to have you here so we could learn a little bit more about you and your background and about Fishbowl, where you're the CEO, and about all the great things that Fishbowl is working on.
yeah. Excited to be here and excited to talk to you, and really excited, importantly, about our partnership. I think it'll be great for both companies.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into that because I think it's pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you want me to start covering a little bit of my background? Does that make sense?
Well, I wanted to ask you how you became the CEO of Fishbowl.
Oh, I got the short stick. We play musical chairs, and I was the last one standing. No, I have a little bit of restaurant experience. I was founder and CEO of Stratex. We were HR payroll SaaS company focused on restaurant and hospitality. We ended up selling the business to Toast in 2019, and I stayed on board with Toast for a hot minute, running strategy for about a year. Took some time off. Did an interim CEO stint with a friend who was technologist outside of the restaurant space, and wanted to help him build and scale a business idea that he had. He's a technology guy. It was in the GRC space and compliance, primarily healthcare. And I got a call from the recruiter who works internally at the private equity firm STG Symphony Technology Group that was private equity owner of Fishbowl, about the opportunity. At the time, the company was named Personika because the previous CEO changed the name from Fishbowl to Personika. So when I got the call from the recruiter, even though I have some restaurant tech experience, I said I've never heard of Personika. Are they new in the space? And the recruiter's like, no, they've been around. This was in 2022. They've been around for 22 years. They used to be called Fishbowl. And I'm like, oh, I was wondering what happened to Fishbowl. Yeah, I was, took the interview, had a specific thesis and what I thought we could build, what was lacking in the marketplace. And I've been here in 2 months. It'll be 4 years. So really excited to be here. I was, I think, the fifth or sixth CEO in a 7-year period of time. So it's almost lapping all my predecessors combined. So either they haven't grown tired of me, or I'm doing an okay job.
Yeah, I like to think it's a little bit of both.
Probably a little bit of both. Probably more the former than the latter.
Yeah. So 22 years, that's a pretty good age for a technology company in the restaurant industry. What was Fishbowl doing on day one?
When the company first started,
Yeah, what
it's
was
it's interesting because I reconnected with the founder, Scott Shaw, who was a restaurateur. I had him actually speak at a kickoff meeting that we had for the company 2 years ago. For various reasons, won't get into it. Like, he didn't have a necessarily falling out with Fishbowl, but he was no longer associated with the business. And I reached out to him. I wanted to hear his founder story because I love founder stories. And it happened to be April 15th, 2000, right? So it was tax day. He was a restaurateur in the DC DMV area, and he put out he had a fishbowl of business cards that he collected, at the restaurant. Like, back in the day, I'm old enough to remember when I was in a business suit every day, and you drop your business card in the fishbowl. And AOL was just coming out, and email was just a new thing, and he decided to put in the two line, a database of everyone that he had a business card from who had an email address, and just did a blast before there was a thing called spam. Everyone saying, come bring in your 1040 on April 15th to one of my restaurants, and you get, I think, a free drink or a free appetizer door. He got a call from a couple CPAs saying, hey,
you're back. Welcome back. Yeah, there's a little bit of a drop
yeah,
out there.
sorry about that. So I don't know where I left off, but you bring in your 1040 and you get a free drink or appetizer. And Even a couple CPAs were like, "Hey, I can't called in. I can't make it today, but if I show my business card, can I get that special tomorrow?" And he had, realized he had something there. And then a handful of friends said, "Hey, Scott, can you do this email marketing stuff for me?" And what came as a side hustle ultimately became his business, and he scaled it from a baby startup. I think at peak, Fishbowl had 55,000 restaurants across the U.S. that they were doing email marketing for, and
Wow.
offer management were like embedding an offer code in an email, and really had the market cornered for a long period of time. So for a company that's been around 26 years in the tech space and restaurant, we should be a lot larger than what we are. So, any entrepreneurs listening here, stay true to your brand, stay true to your core mission, continue to iterate and evolve and grow. Because the company lost its way for a while, right? Like it's there's no other way to say it. It lost its way so much that my predecessor changed the name, right? Because Fishbowl was no longer, I guess, a good thing. When I joined, it was I wanted to, since I've always been an entrepreneur and always like to work with earlier stage startup companies, is where I think my sweet spot is. I wanted to bring a lot of startup culture and feel to the organization. We were going to rebuild and redo what Fishbowl was. So I brought a startup culture to the company, and I decided to lean into our history and had some fun and changed our name back. It was, I think, one too many times of me reaching out to customers and saying Fishbowl. I mean, Personica. I'm never going to get used to saying Personica. I'm going to always call you Fishbowl. So I think one too many calls like that, I'm like, we're Fishbowl, and just embrace it, enjoy it, and be true to who we were and are. And it's been a fun 4 years. The thing that when I joined, that in addition to the entrepreneurial spirit and startup culture I wanted to bring, the other thing that I had a specific thesis on what I thought was missing in the space at the time. I would see some of our competitors refer to that. We have a CRM, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we can do loyalty, we have a CRM, but I didn't really feel like anyone in this space truly had what like a HubSpot or a Salesforce or a true business to business CRM has, which is like, as the center of all your customer information, every interaction you have with a customer or prospect. It's the system of record for all your customer interactions. I didn't feel like there was anything in the space, and I felt there was opportunity for us to evolve and change. And knowing that there are so many different point solutions around guest data, that no one really held the answer keys or all the data for guests. So, we call it GRM, or guest relationship management, but it was really just an opportunity to take all the data that a guest, the breadcrumbs that a guest has throughout their involved interaction with a restaurant or restaurant group, and bring it into a synthesized single view of the guest. So when I'm interacting with my guest, it becomes that much more personal and, experiential.
How much different from that was Fishbowl 4 years ago when you started?
Yeah, outside of the tech stack being a little bit older, we were known as an email marketing company. We had some SMS capability and still do. But I would be able to send offers. I'd able to segment a list of, these are my people whose birthdays this month. Let's embed an offer code for a free appetizer. If you come in during this month and show this coupon or offer, we'll give you, free appetizer. And, the attribution redemption cycle was, is still really powerful for that. But that was really the core products that Fishbowl had. And quite candidly, it wasn't the most defendable moat as it relates to, being able to retain and grow customers, because invariably, you have loyalty solutions and point of sales that can say they can do email marketing. Email marketing has become fairly commoditized to the point where it's table stakes. If you're doing any marketing automation, you're going to have some form of email communication. So, we were bleeding customers more than we were adding new customers when I joined, and the product wasn't really that differentiating or competitive.
So when you picked up the reins, it definitively was not a CRM at that time.
No, we were an email marketing platform. At the time, we had no sales reps. We had a handful of account managers that were, just basically wrapping their arms around their customers and holding on to them the best they could. I'd get a churn report for when I first joined. I looked at a churn report for the previous year, and I knew that the next couple of years were going to be rocky until we had the opportunity to introduce a new technology suite and, reposition what Fishbowl is in the market. And, it was a lot like changing your socks while running a race in that regard. It's been 4 years. Our new GRM platform is robust and stable, but there was an awkward period the first couple of years where it's new technology. There were bugs. We had to make the calculated decision. We have this restaurant group that 200, 300 locations, been with us for 7-8 years. Really happy with our email marketing capability, but I also know that there's an opportunity for them to probably leave if someone else offered them a brighter, shinier toy. And the other side was this new platform that we had, and it was buggy. Had some issues like, what's the calculated risk of, are they going to churn on the old platform? Or if I put them on something that maybe isn't as robust and capable enough yet, are they going to churn on that? And there was a lot of tough decisions along the way, and I can say that almost 4 years later, we are finally at a place where I would put any of our legacy customers on the platform and feel very comfortable to go to a new mid-market enterprise brand and position the product and know that they're going to get a great experience. But, there was some balance there for a while.
Were you running two completely separate systems and a client could either be on one system or the other?
Yes. We did not market the legacy platform to new prospects, though. Our sales team was only equipped to position and sell GRM, because within GRM is email marketing, SMS marketing, offer management, and obviously a lot more. But the core features of the legacy product, the new product had in a different form factor, because it's the UI and the interaction with the software is reimagined. But in terms of what we are delivering, it was pari passu.
So you essentially built a brand new product and then emerged out of the old product at some point and just had everyone
Correct.
on the new one.
Yeah, and we still have a lot of clients. Probably 10-15% of our legacy client base is still on the old product, and we're not putting a gun to anyone's head that you have to move, but we're giving, doing the more of the carrot approach that why it's going to benefit them to move over. And our goal is hopefully by this time next year, we can deprecate and sunset the legacy product, because obviously, as you know, from a having a little bit of a technology background, it's expensive to maintain two code bases.
Yeah, absolutely. And on one hand, it's a testament to how much people liked that original software. I mean, kind of one of the goals of creating software is to create something that people can't live without. So if you have to yank people away from it, in some sense, it's a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. But it's what we try to metaphorically say to clients when we talk to them is, it's like it's akin from moving from a PC to a Mac, from Outlook to Gmail. Pick your metaphor. It's going to have all the same functionality, just the buttons might look a little bit different spots, but all the features and functionality is still there. But people don't like their cheese being moved.
Yeah, people don't like change. That's definitely true.
Yeah.
Was the idea, so you got in, you said, hey, we have to do something more differentiated. Was this idea to become a GRM something that you instantly recognized, or was it a journey to get there?
When I interviewed with the private equity firm, I did a presentation with my final interview on, what I want to do and where I want to take the company and the product. And it was already part of my thesis when I was interviewing. What I did is I spent my first 60, 75 days, my first 2.5 months, meeting every customer that was willing to meet with me. And I even reached out to a handful of, churned customers and to get feedback. And I, asked, some open-ended questions, how they're using us, what they're doing for other things. And then I, high level sold like what I want to build and does that make sense? And I got a lot of positive feedback that we were onto something there. And once we build that, they'd be interested in coming along that journey with us. Some of them, we were not able to retain long enough to get to the new platform. There's a handful that left and have since come back to us on the new platform, and that is very validating and reassuring that we're heading in the right direction. From a product roadmap perspective, I've always espoused to the theory that just talk to your customers as much as you can. They'll build the roadmap for you.
They tell you what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've started to. That's definitely something we recognize here too. People will tell you what they want, and then hopefully you build it in time.
Yes. Yeah, that is true.
So let's talk about your GRM. What can it do? First, I mean, one of the main things it does is get data from a lot of different places. Isn't that right?
Yeah. We try to view it as a single source of truth for, the gold standard for guest data. So think of every place that you interact with a restaurant group, whether that's point of sale, whether that's online ordering, whether that's pay a table, whether that's making a phone call to the restaurant, whether that's interacting with a loyalty system, whether that's interacting with guest Wi-Fi, whether that's giving feedback in a feedback system, online ordering, I think I already mentioned, creating a reservation at a restaurant. The only really black hole we have, because if you speak to third-party delivery providers, they'll tell you that those customers are their customers, not the restaurant customers, is we have a difficult time getting data from an Uber Eats or DoorDash, et cetera, because they view Touradj's data as Uber Eats, not the restaurant who you order from.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because that topic came up with one of our prior guests, and I was pretty shocked because you're getting all those orders, and you must know the first name, and that's it. Is that how it works?
Yeah, we think we found a good hack, because we're getting appended data now from an Axiom type service where we'll know that Adam Ochstein lives at this address, household information, married, presence of kids, basic demographic. So if we're able to ingest the Uber Eat or DoorDash order and it's Adam O and we have the address from the delivery and we already have my appended data, we can do some matching algorithm. Now it would probably get a little bit fuzzy with some inaccuracy is if I'm living in like New York or, apartment building where it's multi-tenant environment where you might have some fuzzy logic there, right? But without a number or without an apartment number or unit number, we should have some pretty good probabilistic matching there.
How do you see the address? Isn't that for the driver?
Yeah, it appears in the order for I think like an hour while that order is still active, and then it goes away. So we're working with a restaurant client that is very focused on ensuring that they view it as their guest data, right?
Cracking the data. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting what these companies like DoorDash and Uber Eats, they've created a service that is in such demand from the restaurants that it really puts them in the power position, which I feel as a tech provider to restaurants, it can be somewhat difficult to be in that powerful of a position where you can keep telling restaurants you're not going to give them what you want, and yet they're going to keep doing business with you.
Yeah, it's a strange dynamic, and I know that when Grubhub's Chicago based, I knew the leadership there fairly well. They were a client of ours early on when I was doing the HR payroll SaaS stuff, and I mean Adam DeWitt, their former CEO, famously said he views it as a race to zero in terms of DoorDash, Uber, and Grubhub at the time, where they're just racing to the point where there's no money in the business, and then obviously they found a way to monetize it by charging the restaurants more, and then the restaurants obviously found a way to still make money on third-party delivery ordering by being able to programmatically charge more if it's going through a third-party delivery chassis versus first-party ordering. $15 cheeseburger versus $22 cheeseburger on Uber Eats.
It is interesting to see that people are willing, and I mean, I've been in that case too, willing to pay so much more for delivery. And then I feel like in some cases, I've started to notice that when I'm going in, because you're so used to paying more for delivery, it seems like the on-premise prices are starting to tick up also.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, you're in California, so you've already been living there without tip credit for front of the house staff. Chicago passed, and that was the other, reason. I feel like there's companies like yours are going to be in a really good position as labor costs continue to rise in markets like Chicago or DC or Florida, where you're eliminating the tip credit. You're going to have to either raise pricing or have less servers in a section, and there's technology is going to have to be the ultimate solution for how do I give good service at a restaurant, give good a guest experience without keeping the same labor footprint that I have maybe historically have had.
Yeah, I think it's one really good angle for restaurants to think about pay at table, like with Up and Go, is that it is a little bit of a labor replacement, because I like to think of a server in a restaurant as having three jobs. One, they're a salesperson. They're trying to sell you things at the table. Two, they're customer service. They want to make sure your food arrives hot if it should be hot, cold if it should be cold, when you want it, how you want it. And the third job is this basically just to be a cashier. And if you can take that third job away from a server, which is exactly what Up and Go does, but with our pay at the table solution, then you've just given your servers a whole lot more time back that they can go and give more hospitality to other guests. They can, take more orders. So there's a lot of ROI there that is reducing your labor and also, basically taking the labor that you do have and making it more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm a big fan of Up and Go is, table turn, reduction of or elimination of one of the three jobs as you referenced. Guest engagement and guest satisfaction is always going to be higher if I, don't have to wave and call the server over. And, I have friends that rudely do it, and, that rudeness no longer exists.
Everyone can relate to that. You want to get out of the restaurant when all of a sudden you hit a brick wall. When you want to go, and nobody wants to be handcuffed to their table. And I'll say anyone selling anything is going to encounter objections with prospects, and sometimes I get this objection from a restaurant. Yeah, we don't want this because we want to provide a good level of customer service, and that always blows my mind because since when is good customer service making people wait? Nobody wants to wait. And
sometimes interact with a server at that really awkward moment, without mentioning any company names, because there's a handful out there now. The handheld, when the server brings has the handheld and they bring it over to you. The staff's not well trained, and I've been in so many awkward situations where the server is literally standing there as you're holding the handheld, waiting to see, maybe they're not waiting to see what you're going to tip, but it certainly feels that way. And it's extremely uncomfortable with like a service like Up and Go. There's no one standing over your shoulder. And to me, that if I'm an operator, there's a lot of value there.
Yeah, I think that's awkward for the server, and it's uncomfortable for the person, the customer, and it's nice to have an alternative to that. We have a restaurant here that uses a POS that is very well known for their handhelds, and it was really interesting because when we first got Up and Go in there, I noticed that if you ate at the bar, there was no Up and Go in sight. They would just come to you with their handheld. But if you sat at a table, they bring the check with the Up and Go QR code on it. And as time went on, I noticed now when I go to the bar, I was at the bar, and the guy almost didn't even talk to me. He just gave me the check with the QR code. And it was like his light bulb had gone off. He realized I just dropped this check and I move on to the next thing, and I've reclaimed, 2 minutes and, the awkwardness of the tip. And I was delighted because I could pay with Up and Go and be on my way. So I do think that I think those handhelds are really efficient for taking orders because people want to get their food faster.
Yeah.
I mean, you balance that a little bit with, feeling like you're just another number to them as well when they're doing that. But on the other hand, you get your food faster. But when it's time to pay, it's really nice to pick up your phone and do it in your own private method. Yeah,
but the most obtuse example I can think of happened quite recently. I was with my wife out for dinner. We were actually down in Florida for holiday, and the server, I'm not exaggerating, was literally standing over my shoulder as I have the device in my hand on the tip screen. And I turned around and I looked at him thinking like I'd give them the clue, can you move?
Yeah,
he didn't move. And I never give a bad tip, but I was so tempted to leave zero and just, as a FU to them. But I decided just to, leave a 20% tip, like hit one of the buttons and move on. But I've never seen one that aggressive before.
Yeah, I wonder why he was hovering there. Do you think he wanted to make sure you left a big tip, or he just wanted to make sure you paid?
I mean, he already dipped my card, so it was already.
Yeah.
it was just getting to the point where it was with tip time, and maybe I look like I'm not a good tipper. I don't know, but maybe I look like a cheap guy. I don't know.
I still remember when I went to college at MIT, and when I first got there, one of my friend's dads was actually an MIT grad, and his name is Don Norman, and he's an author. He famously wrote this book called The Design of Everyday Things. And my first couple of weeks on campus, he was giving a book talk for his new book called The Invisible Computer. So of course I went to check it out. And at the time, I just listened and I didn't know what to think about it, but it was really telling the future, because now 20 years later, I think of the story that you just told me about this handheld device, and I compare it to Up and Go, which is a little more invisible. And I think his whole thesis is that as time goes on, the computer becomes invisible. It just gets embedded into the other things that you already have. Like your phone is already a payment device. You don't need another payment device. And you just really reminded me of that story.
Yeah. And then robots are going to replace us all, and it's all going to be, we're just going to be servants to robots. So what does it matter?
Yeah, I do. I have heard, we have a client with a bunch of hotels, and they have robots delivering room service. And I was in a hotel in Cartagena about a year ago, and they had just two little robots roaming around, delivering room service. And when they were idle, they would go into their little docks and charge themselves, just like those vacuums. It was very interesting.
Was it?
I don't know how I feel about that.
Uncomfortable or awkward to get the food, or didn't seem weird to you?
Well, I didn't. I normally love room service, but that trip I didn't get any. So, but I don't think I would mind, because I actually find it. You're talking about people standing over you waiting for the tip. That's exactly what happens when you get room service. Even without a device, they're just standing there while you have to scribble in your tip. And I don't like that either.
Or sometimes you're scantily clothed as you're grabbing the food too, right? So,
Yeah.
I guess someone's looking through the robot's eyes, but at least I'm not staring back at another human being as I'm in my tidy whities trying to, put a robe around me, right?
I agree. I think 10 years from now, there'll be robots just zooming around us everywhere we are. Each of them with a different task to do.
Do you have the delivery robots around San Diego? Because I'm in Chicago, and when I was walking my dog the other day, and in our neighborhood there was one. I see them everywhere now. My dog started like cowering and flipping out when the robot was like coming down the street with like its the little robot eyes, the delivery eyes. I always find those things a little bit weird.
We don't have them here, but I've seen them in other cities. They're in LA, a couple hours from me, and a couple other places I've visited. And it reminds me of when the scooters had their heyday, and those were all over the place. But of course, these are autonomous. Yeah, I don't really have an opinion on them yet. I guess if I get an order with them, I'll see how I feel.
Yeah, we have on our front stoop, we have stairs going to our front door. So I guess it would be less convenient for me, because I'd have to walk I'm in Chicago in the middle of winter. I'd have to walk down 8 or 10 steps in the cold to get my food, as opposed to a human being bringing all the way up, to the door.
Yeah. Well, they're gonna have. I think I've seen some stair climbing robots.
Oh, really?
On the horizon. Yeah. Well, I've seen some examples. Yeah. Particularly the ones that want to join the military and shoot people. All right. So back to restaurant tech. So we were talking a little bit about the black hole of guest data, third party being one of the big black holes. What would you say comes after that? What is the next most difficult area to get guest information?
As the space is getting more crowded, and as tech companies are starting to realize that it's a data game, and guest data is gold, and as big data is truly big data now with a lot of the AI models, we're starting to see some protectionism from some partners, point of sale partners in particular, that are using the thin veil of PCI compliance for reasons to not share transactional data
Interesting.
from POS. There's a handful. If the customer gets loud and aggressive, I've seen them back down because, point of sale is still a very competitive space. So, but if the customer doesn't say anything or doesn't demand it, we've run into brick walls there. And to me, that's not how I would ever operate Fishbowl or any company I was in. Like, I'd let the customer dictate what their tech stack should be. And there's going to be co-opetition, right? There's going to be scenarios where, they want to use us for some things and one of our competitors for other things. Like, I can think of at least 10 to 12 clients right now that use a loyalty competitor for loyalty, and we are ingesting that loyalty data into our CRM, right? And it's just another data source. And we even go so far as pushing back to some of those loyalty providers who ask for it, our synthesized, harmonized, fully curated data set back to loyalty providers so that they can give a good experience to our joint customer. To me, that's the only way to operate. And even if we were the 800-pound gorilla in a multi-billion-dollar company, I'd like to think we would still act the same way.
Yeah, so what you're saying is you give the data back to when you collect data from a loyalty solution, you also give it back to the loyalty solution.
We'll give it back to them.
Or you give other data
complete.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that because
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You were onto something there. Oh, okay.
forgot.
Well, what I see are all these little pools being formed with each of these vendors because, like, if you have reservations, it gets to know it's basically a CRM of the people who made reservations, and if you have loyalty, it's a little CRM, of the loyalty customers. And if you have online ordering, you're using Olo, let's say, or Toast or whatnot, you have a little CRM of your online ordering customers. So you have all these little pools, right? And then you have solutions like Fishbowl that want to suck in all of that data. But then when you talk about also sharing it out, then you start to turn, each pool kind of forms an ocean, and then all these little pools tend to just have their own copy of the same ocean that's like being synced from all these other pools. And so it kind of seems ultimately like you just get this almost like the water that's running under the ground that everyone can just tap into when they want to. Like, maybe that'll be the ultimate destination for this technology.
I think that's right. And I think that's how it should be. Like with OpenTable or Resi, which are, the two largest, marketplaces for reservation management. OpenTable even is calling their CRM a GRM, which is music to my ears because we're starting to get starting to get traction with the name. We didn't mean it to be a product name. We wanted to really definitively say it's a CRM for restaurants, so it should be a GRM. It's around your guest. And OpenTable is calling it their GRM, and we have a bidirectional integration with OpenTable. So we'll grab in all the reservation data, we'll marry it with the transactional data. If the operator, gets tagged information on, VIP or loyalty information or notes that they take in our system, we'll post that back to OpenTable. So the next time Touradj comes in at the guest book at the host stand, they have all of our curated data on your profile, because at the end of the day, our ultimate goal for servicing the hospitality industry is to provide great guest experiences. And if we're a piece of that, great. If we're the entire solution, even better. But, let the restaurant choose.
I really admire and share your position. I think the data ultimately belongs to the restaurant, and our job is to help the restaurant. And I think that partnerships that companies like ours have with each other is also crucial, and we should all be helping each other. So, I totally agree with that. You should share, you should make what you have available.
Are you starting to
And
see it? Go ahead.
oh, well, that's why we made our webhook, which you're now one of the first users of our webhook. So I'd love to talk about that a little more when the time is right. But you had a question.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, are you starting to see some of the point of sale providers um, competing with you a bit, where you're like you're a supplemental service for that point of sale? Are you starting to see the point of sale vendors ape some of the stuff that you all do?
That's a good question. No, I think they certainly were going back a few years, but now I think it's settled down a bit. I think the goal, I've always felt that when, let's say, a POS adds pay at table, QR code pay at table, I don't believe they're competing with Up and Go. I think they're competing with the other POSs. And these POSs, they each want to say, hey, we can give you everything you need. It's not just pay at table. They have, some of them are working on or have some early versions of CRM. They have online ordering. Pretty much any tool that you can get from a third party, the POS has it also. And they just want to say our POS is better because it has everything. And so I think that's how I interpret that dynamic.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I also think it doesn't really matter how big of a company you are. You can have one of two strategies. You can either go for breadth or depth. And with a POS, it's breadth because I would never want to be a POS because the list of capabilities you have to provide is endless. You're going really wide. But when you're a point solution, I guess, hopefully that's not a derogatory term, but when you're focused on primarily one thing like Fishbowl or Up and Go, and it doesn't have to be ultra narrow, but when you have generally one mission in mind, you can go really deep and you can make it work really well. And I think for a restaurant that's interested in having the best of certain categories, they should have options available to them.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And we want to get to a place where POSs are recommending Up and Go over their own solution because their customer might have some need that theirs doesn't do, and it doesn't make sense for them to add it. And that does happen, but I think there's room for it to happen more, and I think over time it will happen more. So, well, go ahead.
I was going to say, I know like in other countries like Australia, it's been somewhat like, pardon the pun, like table stakes for a while now, though, right? The ability to.
Oh, pay at table?
Yeah.
There were a couple of companies down there, and then I think they merged, and I think they've tried to do some business in the U.S., but I have not run into them and as if they're any form of serious competition. I do think pay at table. I think the culture around how you pay at the table is very specific to the country you're in. I don't think it's something that
Makes sense.
transcends. Yeah, I don't think it transcends international borders very well. So, fortunately, we're here in the U.S. and we've only been focused on the U.S. and we built our solution in a way that it helps people do what they're already doing without asking them to change what they're doing. Very much, at least on the server side. You said something earlier that piqued my attention, and what was also something I had noted here that I wanted to ask about you, because you were talking about when the guest comes in, knowing who they are, and for example, maybe having a birthday special for them, and and I think you called it co-opetition with the loyalty providers. It feels like there's a little bit of a Venn diagram, if you will, where there's an overlapping section between loyalty and GRM or CRM. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and we do have loyalty solutions today. So we compete with the pure loyalty providers.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a our offer management that we've done for years now, for long before I joined the company, at least going back 10, 12 years. The ability to embed an offer code in an email or a text, bring that in, show it to the server or the cashier, integrated with the point of sale, where okay, that's a $10 off code. Button pops on the POS, redeem it, and then comes hits our system. Okay, that's valid. Okay, we know that Adam is the one who redeemed that now. A lot of our clients, when I asked, like, do you want to get, like, are you rolling out a loyalty solution? What do you have for loyalty? And a lot of them would say, we use you for loyalty. And what they meant was our offer management system for a lot of these brands, that was a loyalty solution. So to me, there is a Venn diagram. There is some overlap there. But the type of groups that we are hyper focused to work with, probably on a go forward basis, is a really good, if I look at a Venn diagram, there's a lot of overlap with Up and Go, where guest data is extremely important. I don't really care that you're guest 1, 2, 3, 4 that comes in once a week for lunch. To me, a classic earn and burn loyalty solution works really well there. Like, I just care about repeat visits, and let me gamify for you to come in, 10, 12, 15 times a year. But when you're talking about, sit down service, to me, loyalty looks a lot different. And loyalty can come in the form of, I don't have to wait for a table. I can get a table when I want one. So it's an integration with an open table or Resi, where Adam Ochstein's going to book it, and I have access to tables that maybe other people couldn't. It's secret menu items or surprise and delight. It's knowing it's my birthday, it's my anniversary, it's knowing where I like to sit, what varietal wine I like, what kind of scotch I like. To me, that is loyalty in a full service restaurant, and it doesn't have to come in the form of a product. It comes in the form of knowing your guest and data. So I often will talk to operators and say, well, we need to roll out a loyalty solution. I'm like, well, we can do that, but do you really want it? You're on razor thin margins. Do you really want to discount, your $50 steak by $5 because someone came in your restaurant 3 times in the last year, and now you're giving them free money for the 4th time they come in? Is that really what you want the behavior you want to drive? And quite candidly, your guests come in your restaurant, they're not coming in for the $5 off.
I think that's a key insight, that in fact, some of the best things you can give are free.
Yeah. Service with a smile, getting your check when you want to paying when you want to pay, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that the last time I came in, I had a bad experience with an appetizer, and someone, the manager, knowing that about me, and thanks for coming back in and bringing out a piping hot appetizer that they screwed up last time and bringing it on the house. Like, those, to me, that's loyalty in a full service restaurant. That drives loyalty.
There's this little breakfast restaurant here in downtown San Diego called Swami's, and I go there every Sunday with my dad. And we showed up this last Sunday, and there was a line, and usually there's not too big of a line, but I noticed that the little counter where we sit was empty. And I just saw the lady, and she saw me, and I was like, can we sit there? And she's like, yeah, it's fine. And so just went ahead of the whole line and, took our normal seat. And I have to say, like, I felt like loyalty has its privileges, you know? The fact that I
Yeah.
go there every Sunday got me ahead of the line. And that's a great feeling, you know? It
And it
feels better than
should.
saving $5. Yeah.
It should. Um, that's a currency that people value. You're too young to probably remember the show Cheers, but everyone wants to be
I
Norm
love
and
that
Cheers
show.
where you walk. What's that?
I love that show.
Yeah, it's everyone wants to be Norm from Cheers when they walk in, and everyone knows their name. Um, and the servers know you. They know where you like to sit. They know what you like to drink. They know things about you. They know about your kids, or what sports teams you root for, and that's loyalty.
That is. That is what makes people feel great.
Yeah.
One question around that. Let's say that you are a server, you're working in a restaurant, and some guest comes in and they have all this history that the restaurant had, and the restaurant has that data. How does that server get that data on the floor in time, in real time, to make that guest feel like they've known them forever?
There's a hole there. We are working on we have a digital chit solution where the challenge we have is not everyone's walking around with a smartphone with Fishbowl on it. We're toying with the idea of a server or front of the house app that has a lot of that data at their fingertips. We're working with a restaurateur in Chicago here who's opening up right now, and he literally is going to be printing out a physical chit of Fishbowl data, knowing the upcoming covers. He's going to have like a little index card that he prints out at the beginning of every shift and hand to the host stand, and hand to the server with the when he walks over the table with a little index card of, this is Touradj and this is everything you need to know about him if you have never waited on him before.
I love that idea. I love that idea. They should get a little chit. I think OpenTable has something like that, but obviously it's going to only be as complete as what they know. And if you have a more comprehensive GRM and it's really focused on this, I think that could obviously take the lead.
Or that, or just get some meta glasses and have like the information appear on the glass.
Yeah, I was telling you before we started our call that I was in La Paz for a few days, and we were at this restaurant, and I think we were the only people in the restaurant, and the guy had this little headpiece, like he was part of the CIA or something like that, and we just thought it was so funny, like, dude, why does he need that? What are they talking about? And so, maybe they were feeding him information about me.
Did you have a good experience there?
Yeah, I
At the
did.
restaurant?
I did. It was one of those 8-course tasting menus. So he was talking in great detail about all the courses. And then, of course, I'm the vegetarian, so my dishes were always a little different. And so he probably couldn't remember all the details. So I think maybe someone was telling him, how my half strawberry compared to like the grilled shrimp on the other side of the table.
That's funny.
Well, I know we're running a little low, but I don't think this conversation would be complete without talking a little bit about our integration.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So we now have a webhook that delivers everything we know about a transaction, what the person ordered, their name, their email address, all their feedback. And Fishbowl is a recipient of all of that information. And I'd love to know just how that's been working I know it's early in one client so far, but anything you can share on how that's been working on the receiving end would be great to hear.
So I
Make sure you only say
about-
positive things.
Yeah, of course. But I talked about how some of the black holes of data that we're getting, and some of them are being created by point of sale providers not wanting to share data. The client that we're working on together, the point of sale there is one of those POSs that doesn't share the data. So for us, Up and Go is tantamount for our success. In order to, the more it's used by that operator, the higher percentage of transactional data we're getting tied to the guest name and email and what you guys collect about them, because we're not getting it from the point of sale provider purposely. So you provide a very, very eye-opening piece of the puzzle for that group.
I love to hear that. That's music to my ears.
Yeah. And it's, our we are actively looking, where can we introduce Up and Go, not only across all of our clients, but maybe in particular with that certain point of sale provider. It might make a lot of sense to have you guys be, in all those accounts. I know that's music to your ears too.
Yeah, this is ending on the best note possible.
Well, I appreciate having some time to speak to you on this, and really, really look forward to our partnership. You guys have been great to work with so far.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Adam. And is there anything you want to touch on in these last couple minutes before we wrap it up here? Or you think we've done a good job?
I think we've done not a good job. I think we've done a great job.
We've done a great job.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay,
Right,
well, thank you
thanks
again.
so much
And
for having me. It's been fun.
it's been very fun. Thank you very much. Talk soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.